Buckle up.
Because it's going to be a long ride.
It's going to be a wild ride.
No one cares, but we're going to tell you anyways.
This is Popcorn Chats. Jack is going to be bringing me dinner once again in the middle of the episode, so I apologize in advance for that.
I still have some ice cream to finish off, so.
Ooh, from where?
Dairy Queen.
What'd you get?
I got a brownie batter blizzard.
Oh, that sounds bomb. I love s'mores
really
blizzards, and I'm so excited for them to be back for the summer. Those are my faves, even though they give me literal diarrhea, like, so bad. I take it in stride because that shit slaps so hard. Okay, anyways, let's get into the episode. As you know, our guest episodes are structured a little differently. If you typically watch on YouTube, there is no pre-show this week. Sorry if that is what you live for this pod. I literally doubt nobody gives a shit about the pre-show, but we are here to do our check-in and to introduce our fab guest of the day, of the week. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's been a hectic day. There's some changes going on at work, so I found that out today. So that just made for like a busier day and busy up ahead. And I'm dog sitting my parents' dog and my brother and his girlfriend's dog starting tonight, kind of. Well, technically starting like tomorrow. But my couch is also supposed to be getting delivered, which I have been waiting for. I have no couch at my apartment for the past month, and I'm super excited. However, my parents are not going to be around to help me move it in, so I'm hoping that I can move it by myself. But also, I just paid for the really cheap delivery back when I had bought it, so they are just supposedly dropping it off at my door and like leaving it. But I don't know if that means like my outside door or like in the building by the mail room, because if it's by there, like, I don't know, I'm gonna flip out. If it's by my outside door, they can't find it without calling me and like asking, but I don't know if they're even calling. So that's why I'm like, I don't know where they're gonna know to put it. And the delivery time is 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow. So I have to be at my apartment literally that whole time, just waiting for it. But I have 2 dogs here, so I don't really know how that's gonna go tomorrow. I'm just gonna keep my fingers crossed that it's early enough, because otherwise if it gets to be like 7 p.m, like I have to leave here in the morning to go back to my apartment at like 7:30 to get online for work. So they could literally be locked up here for 12 hours tomorrow. So that's like, you can't do that, but also like I literally have no option. And I just really hope that I can move this couch by myself because there's no one around to like help me.
That is a very stressful situation, and I hope it goes well, and I wish I was home to help you.
I don't know. We're just going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that it goes well, because otherwise I'm like really fucking stressing about it. So anyways, how are you doing?
So update from last week, Michaela and I both got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and we all know the controversy of that whole situation. I'm kind of grateful because it really gave me insight into how my therapy journey has been going and my like medication that I've introduced into my life. I feel like a year ago, this whole situation would have me spiraling and being like, I need to plan a will, like I am dying, the odds are just not in my favor, like being hung up on the worst case scenario and not being able to like function.
Yeah.
But I've been very like level-headed about the whole situation, very like logical, even-keeled. My mind is not racing away with the blood clot situation, and I feel good, and it really gave me the opportunity to see for the first time that like I have made progress with my mental health in the right direction, and I kind of felt a little bit good about that, and I was just like, you know, it was kind of silly. Literally the day before, I got it on Monday, and then the next day they're like, we're gonna stop giving it to people. We both got Johnson & Johnson vaccines, and we're just vibing, living.
I mean, is that not the most Katie and McKay thing to happen? Like, we've been waiting for these vaccines, and then it's like, never mind. But you know what? I literally do not care. The chances of it are so low. And even if it does, you know what?
Well, I mean, it is what it is. And then also, we did have a little bit of an upsetting moment today. Do you even want me to talk about that, or are you over it?
No, you know what? Go ahead and bring it up. Just...
So
Some people don't understand sarcasm very well.
Yeah. Obviously, we struggle with this internet thing that we're trying to do because we're a little sensitive and we don't do very well with criticism. Wait, what?
I would say criticism and stupidity are two different things.
Well, yeah. We are most active on our TikTok. If you're not following our TikTok, you are stupid and you should be doing that. We obviously love any engagement that we get on there, and we like seeing your guys' thoughts on the episodes and everything, but people have been coming at us for literally no reason, and it's really rude because they aren't using context clues and they don't know how to read. Michaela so kindly she writes out the words that we're saying, so you can just read what we're saying and then understand that your comment is stupid and you should remove yourself from the internet. Thank you.
But our episode
no one
last
knows
week,
what I'm talking about.
our episode last week was Radio Rebel, and we were talking about how horrible this movie was. And we compared it to saying that we would rather watch The Kissing Booth 1 and 2, which are also horrible movies, that we would rather watch those than watch Radio Rebel, because it's like, you know, you'd rather watch this shitty movie over these even shittier movies. And people don't understand that. They're like, I wouldn't watch either. And like, what did the one girl say?
She was like, y'all are on one.
She was like,
that
what are you guys
horrible.
on? And I'm like, do you not understand? Have you listened to Kissing Booth 1 or 2, both of our episodes where we just roast the shit out of them? Like, I didn't respond or anything on our Popcorn Chats TikTok. Whenever I've gotten like mean comments on my personal TikTok, it's either blocked immediately because I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. It's literally a video of me painting. Like, fine, you don't like it, don't watch it. But we just let the ones on Popcorn Chats pod be, and I'll be more lenient on that. But if you come onto my own with any of that nonsense, I just don't have time for you, and you were just blocked. I remember I got this one hate comment from a girl, and then her profile picture was Trump 2021 with like little hearts around it, and I was like, well, that is not sad to see you go.
No.
Blocked and bye.
It's probably the same person who left those rude comments are probably the same people who gave us that 1-star review. So
Still trying to make up for that.
Haters, kindly back the fuck off.
Like, I love to see when we get traction on stuff, but then I also hate what that brings, which is people being negative, which, I mean, you can't control that, but like Katie and I said, we're sensitive.
Yeah, and if you're
We
gonna
don't like
put
it.
the time and energy and effort into leaving a hate comment, at least have it be a smart
accurate.
one. Like, be accurate. Yeah, understand what you're hating on. Because, honey, we're the same. We feel the same about these films. Like, you're not having a hot take by any means. Anyways, I'm just insulted that somebody thought I liked The Kissing Booth. I'm pressed about it.
It's like, how dare you?
That movie.
How dare you? I mean, like, fine, you want to come at me for saying that I enjoy After. I deserve that because it's bad, but like, I'm aware of it. So it's like, you want to leave me a hate comment about that. I get that. But The Kissing Booth, don't even try to say that Katie and I defend those films, or Joey King.
Or Joey King and her tragic wig. Okay. We can move on to this episode. Okay, guys. So we have a very special guest for this episode, and now it's so awkward because she's in the Zoom, and normally we introduce them when they're not in the Zoom, but great. Okay, that's fine. We're here. So we're talking to another filmmaker on the pod. She's based out in the Los Angeles, California area. Her and I met at the beautiful University of Iowa in the cinema program there. She is a writer, a director of many short films, founder of BanditxApparel. She's the co-producer at the production company Plex City, and she's a photographer and just an overall creator, an amazing woman in the industry. So we're so excited to have her on the pod. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Miss Shelby Campbell.
Katie, you cut your hair.
I did cut it.
Is that recent, or do I just not pay attention to things?
No, it was recent, yeah, and I don't really post pictures of myself.
I was like, what?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing like pretty well. So I'm living in my friend's apartment for the year. Well, it was supposed to be a year, but Joe Biden said that he's sending our troops home in September. So I don't know, because I'm staying in my friend's apartment. She's been deployed. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, I'm here right off of Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. Fun and interesting because I'm from LA, but I'm from the other side of LA where the real people live, not the celebrities. So, and it's like really fun. Like as an aspiring filmmaker, I'm like, there is a billboard on every block, and I'm like, this is like the perfect place to like get me like juiced to make stuff. So there isn't like a better place for me to be, but I'm still nannying right now, although that I'm kind of in an in-between zone because my family doesn't need me anymore. So I'm like, oh, so I'm just gonna write for a while and see where that goes.
Love it.
I'm free falling again, but it's not as scary as it was when I first got down here.
I know you have your short film that you're developing and then a pilot, animation pilot. What else are you working on?
Kind of juggling two things, and one is doing shorts and directing and like trying to make sure that I keep up with that because that's like the long-term goal. But I also need to make money, and if I'm gonna have a job, I would like it to be somewhat related to like my career. And so I kind of rediscovered writing this past year because I don't really know how to explain it. I've been a writer at least like seriously since I was like 12 or 13. So I don't know, somewhere between then and now I like lost track of that. Even though I studied writing in college, my brain was on directing. So that's been like really fun, and it's kind of like opened that door up for me again.
When you want to do so much and there's so many now with like the new age of technology and the way you can connect with people, it's kind of overwhelming, like all the different paths you can take. And with the creative industry in general and like the film industry and breaking into this already like tough business, there's not one path, and that's something that like I've struggled with and my parents have struggled with. They're like, you gotta do this, I heard you should be doing this. It's like, okay, just because you heard that or like read it on an article that Steven Spielberg did that, first of all, that man rose to his prime several decades ago. It's completely different.
I can't tell you how many times my dad tells me like John Singleton directed his first feature at 21, and I'm like, that was like in the 90s, early 90s when he did Boys in the Hood, and it's like Spike Lee was coming out around that same time, and especially for Black filmmakers, like that was like a prime time to just go for it. But it's 2021. I'm like, they've already done that, so I have to find a new way. I have this conversation.
Parents mean well, you know, like they just want to help us, but it's not helpful when they like badger you kind of and are like, well, I know so and so and they know so and so and then they know so and so, and it's like, that's like not really how you think it's gonna work. Like that's not gonna work out.
I've realized that I'm the kind of person that just wants to like see where it goes, and like now is the only time that I'll be able to do that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm never gonna be more free than I am right now.
We're gonna talk about the Oscars this year because Shelby has worked her way through several of them.
I stopped last week. I've got so there are some I can't watch. So I didn't realize that Judas and the Black Messiah was only on HBO for a limited time. So when I went to watch it, it was gone, and I was so hurt.
Oh.
The Father is only in theaters, I think. And then there are some that like I can watch, and I got burnt out. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It stopped being fun. I started it because I wanted to have an opinion, because I've never, like, every time the Oscars come around, I'm like, oh, okay, like, cool, exciting, whatever, but I never actually watch the films that are nominated. And this year I was like, no, I want to see, so that when this film wins, I could be like, nah, it should have been a different one. And I enjoyed it at first, but then I kind of worked through all the ones that were like remotely interesting. There's like one that I think I want to watch where this like private investigator, it's a foreign film, I think, this private investigator sends this old man into a retirement home to go undercover for him, and then it's about like the old guy in the retirement home and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that sounds like an interesting kind of original idea, but I have not watched it, and I don't know that I will before next Sunday.
Because I feel like this year, honestly, just all of 2020, I've just been trying to like create a feeling, you know, like to make myself feel something. And I want to like, I've been so nostalgic, I feel like, this entire quarantine. And I, like, with the movies this year, was just really looking to recreate the feeling that I had for the Oscars in 2016 with Moonlight and La La Land and that whole debacle. And that year, like, that was my favorite year
Such
of
a great
the
year.
Oscars ever. And then 2017 was really good too.
What won 2017, do you know?
I don't remember what won, but that was Lady Bird and Call Me By Your Name.
2018 and 2019 too.
2019
were both great
was
years.
really good.
2019 was a stellar year. That was I think one of the last. That was the last one because there wasn't one in 2020. Because I was gonna say that was the one when I watched every single one of them. No.
Yeah, Lady Bird is in my like top 10.
Oh,
films.
2017 was Moonlight.
But I meant for like the year of 2016.
I see what you're saying.
Like the films of 2016, but it was in 2017. I just feel like thinking back to the gems and like my favorites of years past, they're so much more lighthearted. I just don't understand why this year was the year to be like, let's make a movie about a woman who lives alone. And the theme is isolation and loss and tragedy. Let's make a movie about the women's issue of rape and like trauma and everything with that. Like, no, it's like no one, which honestly it's not that surprising because I felt like all of 2020, all of Hollywood was like, stay inside. Not us though, you know, like, except for us because we're better than you. Like, so it's like none of them lived through the same year that we did and we're all just like broken down. And it's like, I don't need this shit right now. Like, I know the world is bad. You don't need to tell me.
They're not escapist films, which is why I watch movies specifically to get away, and I think that's what everybody's been doing for the past year because of quarantine, and this year's Oscars does not reflect that in any way, shape, or form. Katie, what you're saying is exactly right, because like watching them, because I was going through, like I went according to category for the most part, so I went like through almost all of the best picture noms, and then like whatever I could watch, whatever was streamable, what could be rented or whatever. There is like an energy in this year's nominations that is like really consistent. It's like either historical fiction or like these like slow paced kind of naturalistic narratives about like a person. I don't know. It's like Nomadland was like, I like that the director is an Asian woman and she was the first to win the Golden Globe. But that's pretty much my favorite thing about that is that that's the director and not so much the film itself. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like something's like really lacking. Like after watching all of the ones that I can't really gauge which one I think is going to win. I think people are saying Nomadland is the front runner. Don't really know why.
I was so bored with that movie, but
I can't believe I made it through it and like was paying attention for at least 90% of it. Like I'm surprised. The one that I enjoyed watching the most was The Trial of the Chicago 7, surpringly. I had no desire to watch that one. I had none. Same. I was like, I don't want to watch this, but it's on the list, so we're gonna sit down and watch it. And I really enjoyed it. I was like, this is a good movie.
Yeah, that one really surprised me.
But like reading reviews, a lot of people didn't like it, but it sounds like people don't like Aaron Sorkin, and so I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I only liked it because I had low expectations. I don't know. That was like my favorite one, and I think my least favorite one. But there's two that I haven't seen, but I really didn't like Mank. I couldn't. So I was also partially intoxicated watching that one, which probably wasn't the best idea. That film's charm is in its intellect, and like so much of it was over my head. I was like, oh, that was a Macbeth reference. Totally didn't get it. Oh, they're talking about Othello. I've never read, seen, or read about Othello. Like so many references, like the political context that is California politics that I know nothing about because I guess they just never taught us California history or I wasn't paying attention. I was just like, I don't know what's going on. So it was hard. I was like, for a particular audience, this is probably a really fun film to watch. But for me, not having the background to understand all the things that are at play here, was lost on me.
Yeah, like a very particular audience, like the Academy period. Yeah. Which is annoying. I got 5 minutes into that because I started watching it with my parents. And I was like, I just like looked over at them and they were both on their phones. And I was like, have you guys even seen Citizen Kane? And they were like, what's that? And I was like, we need to shut this off because like... it's not gonna make any sense.
I I just feel like this year, no one read the room of people needing like a break watching a film. And I've only seen two, and I only plan on watching one other. I've seen Promising Young Woman and Sound of Metal, and I want to watch Trial of the Chicago 7. I don't really have interest in watching of the other ones, and honestly, like, I don't even think I'm going to go back and watch them, because I've watched all the trailers for them, and there just seems to be a lot of pain in all of these movies, and like I don't want to watch that right now. Like, I am in enough pain in this world. Like, I don't need to like watch it on my screen for hours. I just feel like there's that lack of charm and like charisma that some of these past years, like when I think of some of these past films, even sad films like Call Me by Your Name that end sad and like I cry at the end of, it just still has that like it factor, and it's like charming and endearing, and I just don't really see that this year. And even in the movies that I've watched, like Sound of Metal and Promising Young Woman, they both lacked that completely.
I think it's heart that's missing. Like,
Yeah.
people are making like the films themselves are good, but they lack Katie and I texted about Promising Young Woman a little bit, and I was like, I just feel like I watched the whole movie and I still didn't know the protagonist at all, as there was this level of distance. And I would say that about The Sound of Metal too. Like, somehow, even though we're following this one character the whole time, I don't feel close to them at all. With the plots like both of those, I feel like you should.
That's the thing too that I feel like is so unfortunate about this year, is that it's such a step up. I mean, still so far to go, but comparing like in previous years, like the diversity this year with like female directors, female producers, like more women off screen, more people of color behind and on screen, like it's definitely steps up from the past year. So it sucks that like all of these films, I just feel like this heaviness around them, because I like want to celebrate all of that. And I'm glad that the Academy is finally at least like getting a nudge, a little nudge in the right direction. But I'm like, I just don't want to see pain this year.
It's, like,
and that's like
bad-
all there is.
It's bad timing too, because it's like it kind of comes off as them trying to like capitalize on the pain and suffering of this past year. Like, I don't know. It's hard to watch a film about like directed by a woman, about like starring a woman, and there's like women working behind the camera. I'm talking about Promising Young Woman because I don't want to talk about something that I shouldn't be talking about. And it's just all about like the worst part of being a woman. Like, why can't we just have not that? Like, why is that so hard to ask? And I enjoyed the film, and like Michaela and I did a whole episode on it, and like it was good, but it's just going back to your point of like, okay, this is like progress, but why doesn't it feel like it?
I think we need films like that, but we also need the counter end where we're like also celebrating the good things about being a woman, not just like we need to highlight the horrors that like women go through, but we also need to like celebrate women.
Yeah, in the Black community, of course, we have this conversation all the time, because the only films that really get nominated with Black people in them are historical fiction that like depict civil rights and racism in a particular manner. The only horror films we get are rooted in the horrors of being Black. It's like, I don't want to watch the horrors of being Black. I want to watch Black people in horrible situations, like with vampires or something. Like, we don't need, like, we live this life. And I have a lot of friends that describe, like, this film isn't for us, which I don't always agree with, but in a lot of cases, it's like these films are about Black people and maybe by Black people, but they're for the people that don't have that experience. And I would say that Promising Young Woman does that for women, where it's like women know the horrors that surround being a woman, but it's like, and that film is a little bit, I had a really hard time pinning that one down, but I think that it does that for, I don't know, men, I guess, but I don't think any men are watching it, to be honest.
And when you say it like that, I mean, again, I can only speak from the perspective of being a woman, but like you can't guarantee that a man is gonna sit his ass down and actually watch that. And if you get that far, you can't guarantee that he's gonna get the message. So wouldn't it be more beneficial to just have a film about a woman who like exists outside of the tropes that Hollywood tends to put women in? Or I don't, again, want to speak for the Black community, but like, wouldn't it be more beneficial? I mean, I personally want to see just like a film about Black people like doing their thing in a movie, you know? Like,
And the thing that it does too is it's like whenever we get these movies about like Black history for, you know, whatever, they're old, right? So then you go to the movies and like presumed older white person goes to the movies and they watch it and they're like, they leave and they're like, wow, that's so unfortunate. I'm glad we're not in the 60s anymore. And it's like, they always end up taking place like in the past. Like the new show Them, that's just like a knockoff Us. Us had me scarred for several months, so I will not be watching this show.
I remember that.
I don't know. I just want to see more people being, and everyone does. That's the thing. Like you guys feel it, I feel it, everybody on Twitter feels it. For some reason, Hollywood is like, oh, we have to show more trauma. And it's like, no, we definitely don't.
you can just skip that part. Like, it's okay.
And even I'm thinking, like, right now as we're talking about this and, like, trauma and thinking, like, watching Euphoria. For Shelby, do you watch Euphoria?
I do, although I haven't watched the specials yet.
Okay. Well, this isn't like spoilery or anything, but those two specials, they're like heavy. Like Rue and Jules are both going through like their own shit. But when I watched them, and Katie, I don't know if you felt this way too, I didn't feel like bogged down with more just like emotion and like heaviness watching them. Like they're dealing with like these characters are really struggling, but yet there's like a certain sense of hope in them, and they're just done like creatively that I'd never felt like that I was watching it and just being like, well, this is just a sad fest again. Like it is, I'm just sick of this. That I feel like what is missing right now in content, especially in like this catalog of films. It's not like after Promising Young Woman, like I loved it. I have like reflected on it. I have like mixed feelings, but at the time I remember finishing it and being like, wow, I still was in a funk after it a bit almost.
Because that one really like throws you for a loop. That's what like your retrospective, like, I had the same thing. Like I watched it and I was also intoxicated watching it. So much so that I watched it again the next day, fully sober during the day, because I was like, I can't tell if I felt that way because of the film or because like I was just like halfway paying attention, and then I watched it again and I felt the exact same way. I was like, something is just something. It has everything except one thing, and I guess it just doesn't feel personal. And I don't know if that was intentional or it just didn't come across. Like I don't know. I have gone back to my Letterboxd review of that one so many times, like, oh, also this, but this was good. And like the cinematography is beautiful, color palettes, like beautiful. all of it, fantastic. Like
Visually so stunning.
So, and I think that it almost distracts from it maybe a little bit, the way that, like, because I feel like there were times where I was like, am I grasping the story or do I just think this looks really nice? And I think it's a little bit of both, but it is not a bad film. Like I still, right now, I'm like, what is it that bothered me? And it's not so much so that I'm like, oh, don't watch it, but it's like I just can't like Mank was easy to pin down. The Sound of Metal, like all of the other ones, I was like, yeah, okay, I like this, didn't like this, I think overall like this, but Promising Young Woman is like very complicated. Maybe that was the point. I don't know. It has a complicated ending.
Films that set out to be like, look at this subject or look at this issue and take it in for what it is and like really examine this issue more than you have in the past. You know, like those films, I can enjoy those and I have enjoyed those in the past. And maybe this is just like a flaw of my own, but obviously like everybody's kind of feeling it. Like this year, 2020 was a huge year of like, look at this issue, and like all you have to do is look outside your window and you see like how shitty things are. Like, you know, we're all kind of confronting in real life in real time these really hard things and bad things that are going on in our country, and it's just a lot. It's overwhelming, and it's like for our generation that has it all on TikTok and we're seeing it all happen, and then the adults in our lives and the people running the country just have no sense of urgency. It's like you're watching a horror movie on your phone and then like we're all living in it and no one's doing anything about it. So then to watch these films that are like, hey, look at these problems, it's like, I know the world sucks. Okay, I get it. Like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like, I can't fix all this. Like, I just want to go to bed and never wake up. Like, this, it's just too much.
I have watched more movies this year than I think in the past few years combined because of that. Like, I was like, I need to get away, and I'd work all day I work 8 hours a day, but I'm gone for 10. Well, not anymore, but I was gone for 10 hours a day. I would come home and I would watch a film and go to bed because it was the only way to like shut everything off. It's like, for these 2 hours I'm watching, for this hour and a half I'm watching Shark Boy and Lava Girl. No one's gonna stop me. Okay. and nothing can interfere with this experience, and I don't have to think about the real world because I'm on Planet Drool, and like that's, and I'm still doing that. I'm just simply turning a blind eye sometimes, which is not always the best thing to do, but it's just too much to handle.
I guess this might be a lame question, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but a comment that my dad made, which, sorry, Mom and Dad, that I'm, like, bringing you up along this episode, but they're, like, my only friends, so my dad was like, is it true that every Oscar-nominated film this year is a streaming service film? And I was like, why do you say that with such sass? Like, we were all at home this year. What do you mean? What are your guys' thoughts about this year kind of like accelerating the direction that we were already going in? Do you think that this is going to influence stuff in years to come as far as the award seasons go?
I surely hope that by the end of all of this, people are so sick of watching things at home that they go to the movies again. Like, I really hope. ArcLight's going out of business. I don't feel super bad about that because they have crazy prices. Like, I hated going to ArcLight because it would be like $17 for a film when I could go to AMC and see it for $10. The fact that a theater is going out of business is like scary because it's only a matter of time. Like, if people don't start going to movies again when we can safely go see movies again, theaters are going to be in trouble. And I hope that we're so also desperate to do things that are not at home that it kind of reverses a little. I'm praying. That might be a lot of faith to put in the human race. But
I agree. I'm also really hopeful that people are more motivated to go to the theater after this and have a new appreciation for it, because me personally, I think that's also another thing of why I haven't really wanted to watch a lot this year, was because I love going to the movie theater so much that it made it fun. Like, every Tuesday would roll around for the $6 Tuesdays they raised at $1. And going to go like check these off like once a week, like that was just enjoyable, the whole experience itself. And I really hope that it doesn't like completely move streaming. But Katie, I do agree that it definitely accelerated this year, but I don't necessarily think that next year it's going to be at the same level as it was this year, because it's just not the only option. Companies are not going to do the same deal with HBO Max where they're going to like release them for 30 days on there. I feel like that's probably not going to happen next year when hopefully we can all be going to the movie theater safely. I think streaming is still going to continue to be prominent in the seasons, but I don't necessarily think it'll be taking over.
Yeah, I think this year, like, it was just a different year, being that a lot of streaming services, they like produced so many of the films that are nominated. Like in 2019, Marriage Story was nominated, and that I remember that being like a huge deal, and they were like, oh my god, a Netflix movie, like, we're going downhill. It's like, bitch, buckle up. Like, we are in for it if you think that is the worst thing in the world. Everything, unfortunately, comes back to capitalism in America, and it's on the production companies and whoever's making movies in the coming years if they're going to release them in theaters, and then it's on the consumer to actually go to the theaters, and if people don't, then they're gonna it's just, yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But
I think at least the vast majority of filmmakers want their films to be in theaters. Like, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
To go. So like, hopefully, like, I can see companies pushing to streaming, but hopefully filmmakers fight back if it does happen that way. If they're like, oh no, we still want to put things on HBO because people aren't going. Like, I hope that filmmakers like, no, okay, like this is not why we watch movies. We watch movies to go see them in the theater, and it's like, I don't know. One of my kids' parents, they think that the movie theater is gonna end up like live theater, where it's like kind of like an event that people, and I'm just like, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I surely hope that it sticks around, because like like the once a week, like that 2020 I started doing that right before the pandemic. I was going once a week. I was like, this is great, this is self-care, and I miss that. I miss it so much.
Yeah. And I think it'll take, you know, some companies like taking the lead. Like I'm thinking Disney, like they are not going to want to be releasing all of their new like Avengers movies, and when the next Star Wars trilogy comes out, they are not going to want to just send that to Disney Plus. Like they are going to want to capitalize as much as they can on those movies in the theaters and then also on their streaming platforms later. And people just don't want to see those movies on their home TV or their laptop. Like even Fast and Furious 9, Katie, the second trailer came out today and I'm so excited to cover it on the pod. Shelby, are you a Fast and Furious franchise fan at all? It's okay, Katie isn't either. But I am so excited, and that is a movie that I don't want to watch on my home TV. I want to see that in a theater with surround sound and on the giant screen. And I just think there are so many movies like that, like superhero action movies that are meant to be in a theater and consumed like that. The companies are gonna know that people want to see them in that way.
Oh, I have a question. Can I ask a question? Did you guys watch the Snyder Cut or read about it at all?
I'm not like a superhero person, but I saw stuff about it.
No, I haven't watched that. I watched like the original version, but I haven't watched the Snyder Cut. No, I didn't love Justice League enough to like watch it a second time.
Me either. And this version is much, much better, but it's way too long. But I think that's a thing that only would work in the pandemic, because there's no way that they were going to re-release a theatrical cut in theaters of a film that they're not even pursuing anymore, because Robert Pattinson's Batman now, not Ben Affleck. So like it worked on the streaming thing worked well for Zack Snyder there. I was impressed, but it's 4 hours because he had to cover the same. So Marvel decided to like do it over the course of like 5 to 10 years. Like the first Avengers came out 4 or 5 years after the first Iron Man film, and Zack Snyder had to cover that same amount of ground in one film. So that's why the first cut was just like, because it cut out all of the character development and stuff, and you put all that back in, and it's so much more full. But it's like you either have to watch a 4-hour film or take 5 years to do it. Insanity. But the streaming, the pandemic and the streaming allowed, I think, for that to work. And HBO did up because they were like, listen, it'll have people on our streaming service. So
Exactly.
Did you see Malcolm and Marie this year?
yes.
Snub.
Robbed.
So like we all know, like Zendaya started on Disney and like she's in Spider-Man and stuff and she's in Euphoria. Until Malcolm and Marie, I didn't really know she could act still, because all of the characters that she's played are variants of the same character. Like if you look at Michelle in Spider-Man and you look at Euphoria, they're the same character except one's an addict and one's a nerd. But like if you look at them like aesthetically and their like behavior and their mannerisms, they're pretty much like two sides of the same coin. But in Malcolm and Marie, I was like, oh, this girl can act. This girl can really act. The way he gaslit her through that film was just wild to me. And like she doesn't not have a role to play in their like toxic dynamic, but like he's definitely like 75% of it.
When she's in the bathtub and he's like, I fucked this girl. It's just like, what?
He unprovoked. I was like, I know he did not just go out of his way just to make her feel that way. Like, he did that on purpose. Never, and that's totally not necessary. And then he ends that whole monologue with, because I love you. I'm like, what? Like, make it make sense.
That has like just that intangible thing, I feel like. Watching that movie, I just had like a feeling watching that versus Promising Young Woman Sound of Metal. Like, it just had that thing. I don't even know. It sounds stupid because I can't describe it, but it was gripping and it was truthful. It felt like Sam Levinson was kind of exploring himself and his own flaws, and I think Malcolm is, well, both the characters are kind of like versions of himself, and he does that a lot with his characters in Euphoria too. Like, it's a self-exploration and it comes off as very authentic and truthful. And John David Washington and Zendaya, I just feel like the two of them together works well. I just love John David Washington, and he just in this was insane.
I was initially like really thrown by their age gap, but the fact that it was written into the story, like I was like, am I supposed to believe that they're like around the same age or like what's going on? It's like it's like 15 years or something like that. But the way that it was like absolutely a part of their story, I was like, okay, I understand now. This like makes sense.
I thought the same thing. I was like, are they trying to make it so he is like younger or she is older? Because like Zendaya does not pass for a 30-year-old person. I'm so sorry. So like, do not try to pull the wool over my eyes that this man is in his 20s. I'm so sorry, but no.
I definitely admire any film that can tell a story in one space and not bore me at some point, which I think that film does. Yeah, and it basically happens in real time, which is you don't really get to see in films, right? Like that 2 hours was 2 hours. Yeah, they did a good job, and you can tell that the actors had a lot of say in what and how they said what they said, especially because it's two black characters and Sam Levinson isn't black. Like in the things that they were talking about and the way they were talking about and the way that they said certain things or slang that they used, I was like, this was them. Like they really got to have a hand in like putting this together.
I just brought it up because I'm surprised that it's not nominated this year. So
yeah, I really like know how all of the nomination things go, but I'm pretty sure you have to like almost apply in order to get the nomination. So maybe they just didn't put it in the hat or something.
Maybe it was too late. I don't know. Because I feel like if that was in the running, like I don't know how that wasn't nominated. If it was, pitched.
Maybe if it was too late, it'll be for next year, maybe.
it could be because they did make it during quarantine. And I don't know if that was the case for a lot of these other ones. I know Nomadland they made in like 2018.
New Mutants, they delayed that by like 4 or 5 years and it came out on HBO and wasn't that good. And I was like, wow, y'all did all this.
I'll be interested to see who wins. I am going to watch the award ceremony and we'll just see what happens. But I'm not going to like ride or die for, 2019 Oscars, I was like stressed. For the Best Actress category, I was stressed.
Who was nominated that year? What was stressing you?
I was stressing out because it was between Charlize. In my mind, it was between Charlize Theron and Renee Zellweger. And Renee Zellweger ended up winning, which we predicted on the pod because Judy Garland is beloved Hollywood figure and the other person that was being portrayed is not.
I remember 2019 being stressed because that was BlacKkKlansman and A Star is Born, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Black Panther. Like that was another just great year. And I remember watching and being stressed because of Adam and Bradley. I was like, I don't know which one of you to cheer for.
It's always like fun, the Oscars, but it just this year it doesn't feel that way.
And I think part of it too is I love the pre-show. Like it starts at noon, like coverage starts at noon and I'm watching them just talking about like the fashion and the behind the scenes stuff throughout the year and these certain actors' journeys throughout the year and their career. And it's just like an event, like I block off the whole day. I'm like, no one talked to me on Oscar Sunday. And this year, because they just can't do all of that, it feels less of like a special event and more just like a TV show.
Yeah. Also, it's super late. Like I remember when the Grammys were happening, I was like, did I miss the Oscars? Like what happened? And then I found out that everything was and then her announced that she was nominated for Best Song. And I was like, okay, so I guess it hasn't happened yet. Everything's just weird. I mean, everything's been weird. I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the Oscars are also weird this year, but...
Since you are a filmmaker, Shelby, we want to kind of talk about your creative process and ask you stuff about that. Michaela and I are both creative people and are familiar with the peaks and valleys of writing and how strenuous that process is and just the creative process in general. So let's dive into it. I guess I want to ask you right off the bat, because it's something that we talk about on the pod, just like that mean ass voice inside your head. At least, I mean, I'm just assuming that you have it. I probably shouldn't do that, but like
maybe other people are nicer to themselves.
Yeah, maybe like you actually have self-worth, and if you do, go off. But especially since graduating from Iowa, where whether you like it or not, you have a deadline, and once that deadline reaches, people are reading your work, whether you like it or not, and they're talking about it with you, and it's like you have to bite the bullet. And the positive with that is you get feedback. It's not so bad, and it's like, okay, I can actually have a conversation about this thing that was in my head, but now it's out there, and it's kind of like a relief. But since graduating, it's been all, for me personally, alone, and it's just me talking to myself about this thing in my head. And I started writing my film last summer, the summer of 2020, and I just finished it in like the first draft, and it was just so hard some days to like face the voice in my head. Like it's literally like inviting it to come. Like, kind of sad to talk about, but I personally don't really have any coping mechanisms with that, and like how to kind of turn that dial down. It's almost like you turn it up full volume when you sit down to write. What is your experience with that? How do you like manage that, if you can? I don't know.
So I've learned a lot since November when I procrastinated. So first, this door opened to pursue animation writing as a job, as a future career, because I actually really love animation, and I just kind of like never, because you go to school, you take film classes, and no one's talking about animation. It's still not really considered a merited medium for filmmaking. Like, it's still like kids films. Like, if you look at the animation nominees this year, the Golden Globes nominated Croods too. I've never seen those films, but I know that's not Golden Globes material. They just don't regard. Like, there are so many great animated films that are like for adults, for teenagers. Like, it is not a genre, it's a medium, and people still don't get that. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. This door opened and I freaked out. I was like, it became too possible. So I dove into my brand, and I was like, nah, I'm just gonna start a brand, and I'm not gonna write, even though I was planning to. And then I launched my brand, and I was like, okay, well, I guess it's just me and this blank page here to get these samples done, to pursue something that I've actually been wanting to do since I was a kid. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Writing has never been so hard, because for the first time I wasn't in school. Like, I would finesse my way through writing assignments. Like, I would write them and I would turn them in and I would revise them and it would just be done. This was the first time where it was like actually kind of going to matter, because I was going to write this thing and then get feedback from somebody who's going to help me turn it into a job. I can't do this. I literally like couldn't write. And I went home for Thanksgiving break, and I was like trying to get myself to write and stuff. And I there was this one day. It was the day before I finally sat down to. So I fudged my way through a first draft. It was absolute shit. Like, it was just the worst thing ever. But I was like, all right, well, at least there's something there. I have something to work off of. But it wasn't a readable draft. So getting the first readable draft that you can like give to someone and they can help you with, because like that first draft is like figuring it out. Getting the first readable draft is always the hardest part for me. I was going to bed, I was like, Shelby, I was looking in the mirror and I was hyping myself. I was like, Shelby, you're gonna write this tomorrow. It's gonna be fine. You're a writer. It doesn't matter. If it sucks, try again. And all this stuff, and it ended in tears. Like, I was staring at myself in the mirror, like crying, like literally crying, because I couldn't do it, and I had never been scared to write before. Like, writing was always the thing that I was the most confident in. I was like, if there's nothing else I can do in the world, I can write something. And for the first time, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I did it the next day. It was fine. It took 4 or 5 hours, but I got a draft done and I felt awesome. I had to go back and revise that draft. So like, sending that to my kid's parent, who is helping me kind of figure this out right now, was absolutely terrifying. And so after getting my feedback, it was like a workshop. It was basically like a teacher, like a professor, or someone who's like, you know, you have that one-on-one meeting and they're like, here's what you might want to consider going forward. It's just like college, except it just means so much more all of a sudden. And it took a month for me to do a second draft. Every time I thought about it, I was like ridden with intense anxiety, and I was like, I still cannot do this. I cannot do it. But when I finally sat down to do it, like, I got inspired one weekend and I wrote 7 hours in 2 days, like over the course of 2 days. And I wrote what I sent you, Katie. And I was proud of it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, it really is powering through it. Like, the voice never goes away. My kid's dad, who's helping me, he was like, yeah, like it always hurts every time. Anytime someone gives you feedback, anytime you send something to someone, it's always scary. It always hurts, never goes away. I was like, okay, well, at least I know the professionals are going through the same stuff that I'm going through right now, as I'm still like trying to figure out how to do this. But the best thing that I don't have any tips except to sit there and be shaking and or be crying or whatever and still get the draft done. Like, I didn't understand what people meant by like lean into your fear or face your fears until I started skateboarding again, which is a weird analogy, but like I was going down this ramp, I was scared out of my mind, and after like trying like I don't know, like 10 times, I finally did it with like out holding on to something, and I was like, so that's what it feels like when you're like scared shitless and you still do it anyways. And like writing feels like that all the time. Every time I sit down, like I have to do another revision next week, I'm like, okay, like I kind of don't know how this is gonna go, but the only thing to do is to sit down and do it and then deal with the aftermath of that. Like, do the revision and then see how you feel afterwards, because it is never not scary, and you're your harshest critic.
Yeah.
And I think for me it's around the third draft that I start to feel good. The first 2 drafts were a nightmare. It was like, this is even when like the short I sent you, Katie, I finished it and I was like, this is not that good, but it's here now, so let me just send it and I'll figure out where to go after. But I guess if you stop yourself before you start, it'll never get anywhere, and that's what I've been working on fighting through, which is like the most difficult part that people never talk about. I was talking to my friend yesterday, she was like, nobody ever talks about the hard part of getting up early in the morning. They just tell you to get up because it feels good, and everybody says writing is rewriting or face your fears or power through it, but no one tells you, 1, how hard that's going to be, and 2, like how to do it. It is difficult. It is the hardest thing ever to really love doing something and it be the thing that scares you more than anything in the world. But it does feel damn good when you do it. Like, how did you feel, Katie, last weekend?
I felt, I was on a high.
Yeah, like you ride that wave until you start the next draft, until you sit down to write something again, and it's just like starting from ground zero. But it's like, it's that high that makes you do it again. It's worth it. It is, but it is like, it's tough.
I think also the high of like once you have the experience of writing something and then seeing it made and like being with something from its conception to its like finishing point, and then you see other people watch that and you hear people gasping or like, sniffling or whatever, like reacting to this thing that like, I don't have a child, but I have to imagine it's a similar feeling to like seeing your kid score a goal in soccer or something. Like, I have spent so much time on this thing. I'm not trying to like compare what we do to like having a child, but it's an indescribable feeling, and that high of like validation and having other people experience the thing that you made and like it, like there's nothing like that feeling. So I think I will definitely be chasing that for the rest of my life, because I haven't found anything that compares to that.
The third draft, the one that I sent you, that I was just like that, I finished that one and I was reading it, and I was on that high for so long that I did more revisions that same day, because I was like, this is actually good, and I was feeling it, and I was like, why would anyone do drugs when you can feel like this after making something that you're proud of? And I was like, no amount of coffee, whiskey, nothing, whatever, I don't know. Being in love is probably nice, I don't know, but but like, I don't think that anything will ever compare to like getting to the point of being like, this is actually good, I'm proud of this, and I'm good at this, or I finished it, it's not good yet, but I did it and it's here. Nothing has ever felt that good.
And especially like after saying for so long, like, what do you want to do with your life? And like, I want to write for television, or I want to write movies, and then graduating and like not going back to how your parents are like, well, do this. It's like great advice, but like, I have to write something first. Like, there's that undeniable fact of like, if you want to be a writer, if you want to do anything, you want to be an actor, you have to do it at some point. Like, and college is a great time to like be like, I'm gonna be this, because that's literally what everybody in college is doing, is they're going to become something else. But when that ends, and it's like,
now you got to do it.
Now you have to do it. And that was like the scariest thing too. And it was kind of like, do I even want to do this? Like, or do I just want to say that this is what I'm gonna be doing?
Because I started having to think of, like, I started telling myself, like, Shelby, you're a writer. Like, actually, the affirmation of I'm a writer. Now, I'm going to be, like, I am, like, in this moment, which helped a lot. But when that was happening, I was like, do I still want to be a director though? Like, is this something that I like actually want to do? Or was this something I wanted to do and like say that I did it, say that I could do it? And I didn't know because I made the decision that I wanted to be a director at 14. It's like, how do you know at 14 what you want to do? And it wasn't until I had a breakthrough on the short that I'm developing right now where I was like, okay, no, I definitely still want to do this. I was just a little bit focused on something else that was equally as important. And so now I have settled into, like, when people are like, oh, like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I'm going to be a writer director. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write and I'm going to direct. Growing up and going to college, like, it's just all self-doubt. It's like, did I make the right decision? Do I have the capability of doing this? So many people want to be writer directors. Anybody that goes to film school wants to be a writer director. Well, not anybody, but most people put themselves on that path and find themselves elsewhere. And I was like, am I going to be the find myself elsewhere person who ends up teaching or something and like wanted to be a director when she was 23, 24 and just never did it? And the prideful part of me was like, no, like, I have to do this because I've been saying I'm going to, and I had to evaluate, like, do I really want to, or am I just doing it because I don't want people to think I couldn't do it? It turns out that I actually do want to do it, thankfully.
Did you see that Dan Levy was doing like a talk at Iowa with their lecture committee thing or whatever?
I did not.
The University of Iowa, Iowa State, and UNI, all of their lecture committees like combined and probably like combined funds to get him. And it was live streamed, obviously, but the stream was like so overcrowded that it was kind of like glitching in and out and not everybody could get in. And I like was tuning in and kind of like busy with other stuff. So I didn't get a whole lot from him, which is unfortunate because I love Schitt's Creek and him, and I want, to absorb as much as I can from somebody like him because, like, I want to do what he does. But the little bit, this was like the night before I finished my feature film draft 1, and he said, like, just do it. Like, once you do it, you are ahead of 90% of everybody else. Because everybody says that they want to do this, but like not that many people actually do it. Everybody has that fear. Like Steven Spielberg wasn't like, I'm going to be a writer director and like there's no doubt in my mind. Like there had to have been doubt. I mean, no one has ever just like gotten a golden ticket right out of the gate and had the path paved for them and they made it. It's been like everybody has started where we all are now.
It's so easy to forget that. Because no one talks about that, Like, no one says, like, oh, yeah, I was a 20-something with big dreams. Like, everybody is, it just, yes, exactly what you said. And it's also so easy to forget that, like, I think for me, like, I've been reminding myself, especially, like, we talked about our parents, how, my dad and my mom they just want to see something from me. They want to know that I'm, like, working towards my goals, which I always am. Like, I have never not been doing that. But I've got my whole life to get there. Like I said, 2 years post-grad is practically nothing accepting that aspect of things in the way that I can just kind of feel things out right now. Maybe fail a couple of times and still be able to get back on my feet and try again a different way is like really reassuring. And it's like some people, yes, John Singleton directed his first film at 21 years old, but Ava DuVernay didn't start directing until she was 33. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you can be both things. Morgan Freeman didn't make it till he was 40. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's never too late. And so I'm starting now, but I'm also comfortable knowing that, like, it might be a while. I might not be balling by my 10-year reunion. And, like, I want to roll up balling to my 10-year reunion to, like, flex on all of my former peers. But, like, it's okay if I'm still figuring it out by then. Hopefully not. Hopefully I've got something under my belt. But who knows? It's such a weird thing to be a writer, especially like I just being at Iowa and listening to other writers talk and stuff. It's like we're just all fucked up.
Honestly. And whenever I'm reading a book, sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, like if I wrote this scene, like this is what I would do. And like, that would be so much better. And then I read other scenes or books and I'm like, I could never do this.
And I think nowadays I do it more with filmmaking, but like 100%. When I saw Little Women, did you guys see Greta Gerwig's Little Women?
Favorite movie of all time.
So good. So like I tried to read Little Women when I was in the 6th grade and it was boring and I didn't finish it.
I will excuse that. But go on.
It was so crazy. I made it through Journey to the Center of the Earth somehow, but I couldn't get through Little Women. But after watching Greta Gerwig's Little Women, I bought the book again. I was like, I'm gonna read this because I need to see her mind at work, because she's excellent. Okay, I was blown away and I was like, I will never ever be this amazing at filmmaking.
Yeah.
But then I watched like some of these TV shows and I'm like, they should have rewritten this scene. This is all off. These lines are not realistic. The direction, these actors are not giving their best performance because the direction is just like not coming together. So many things, and it's like
I could never ever do what she did with Little Women. Like, that is just such a huge, like, we don't need to talk about it because I will go on and on.
I was gonna say, we already have an episode, everyone. You can go check that out.
What type of film and TV stories do you gravitate towards and kind of idolize as a creator, and what do you like draw inspiration from?
I particularly like teenagers, young adults between the ages of like 15 and 23, I think. Oh, I had this conversation with one of my friends where it's like, coming of age films are usually about like 16, 17-year-olds, but there is a coming of age that you have at 22, 23. When you graduate college and you have to do you're not going through puberty and you're not like ridden with hormones anymore, but you have now to assimilate into like the real world as an adult. And there are like no films about that for some reason. The figuring it out stages of life where you're just like absolutely confused and everybody thinks they have answers for you, but the only person that can have the answers for you is you. I'm always drawn to a story with people with superpowers. I grew up in a heavily pop culture influenced family. Like my dad was a comic book kid growing up, and it's just like a huge part of my life. I don't know if I would ever want to direct a film like that because it's just like the scale is too big. You know, shooting an entire film in front of a green screen and directing visual effects and stuff, totally not my jam. I want 2 people on a couch. Okay, that's like more my speed. So, but definitely things like that. John Hughes. Grew up watching John Hughes movies with my mom. Like, she's obsessed with like the teen flick, so she kind of created me. So I really like kind of combining those things. Like Scott Pilgrim is really fun. It's like a kind of all-encompassing, like, 1, he's figuring it out, and 2, it's like kind of comic booky and quirky, and like it has a particularly stylized energy. I really like stylized films, although I don't necessarily think of myself as a stylistic filmmaker. I think the things that I come up with are much more realistic, but I love a film that like has its own energy. I have such a hard time rating films, like on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. My rating for a film is, did I like it or did I not? So like when people are like, oh, this is an inherently bad film or this is a good film, I'm like, I don't know, I just like liked it or I didn't like it. And that's why Shark Boy and Lava Girl is still in my like top 10 films of all time, because it's like, that's my second time mentioning it. It's so sad, but it's not, because there's like a ton of nostalgia linked to that one for me. But 2, I like resonate with that story, and it's like, even at almost 24 years old, a story about a kid who has such an intense imagination that his imaginary characters come to life is like the coolest thing ever to me. And so I love films like that. It's not very specific. I'm kind of all over the place, but I like it that way. Like, I kind of like to try my hand at different things. There's just so much out there that I would hate to limit myself to one thing. Yeah, but like at the center, it's like young people, I think, and like maybe when I hit midlife crisis, I'll venture into the midlife crisis transitional period, because that's the third coming of age you have, where you're like, I'm 40, but I don't know anything about that yet. So
I think it's so obvious too when adults try to write kids as they are now. That's what I appreciate so much about Greta Gerwig and her coming of age film is she wrote it about a girl living in the time when she would have been a teenager, you know? So it's not like her take on teenagehood now, because that always comes off as so tone deaf. So I'm just surprised that there's not more like, well, I'm not surprised because although we're young and we do have the perspective of people like actually going through this stuff right now, we don't necessarily have all the life experience and bullshit like that people want. But yeah, I also gravitate towards young people, but I think it's just because I am a young person.
And I've always wondered that, like, I'm like, do I like writing about like young adults because I'm a young adult, or am I gonna stick with this? And I think I won't know until I'm like older, because at first I liked writing about people who were like 15 to 18, and now that I'm in my early 20s, I'm like into the early 20s, and who knows, by the end of my 20s I'll be like, actually I just write. I feel like it'll probably end up being, I write whatever story I feel like needs to be told or that I want to tell. But yeah, definitely at this point, just like, man, it's hard out here in these streets. Like
I agree. One of my books started out as YA and like in high school, and I was writing that while I was in college, but then once I was out of that class that I was writing it for, and then I started going more on it, I was like, this doesn't really work as YA. So then I'm like, I'm gonna switch it to being like in college. And then now I've like pushed it to like senior year of college, like in graduating, and I'm like, am I just gonna keep pushing this story farther out because like I'm trying to make it follow where I'm at in my life? That I'm like, that just needs to get like fucking finished where it's at. I'm like, you're not moving. I'm not changing you anymore. You're staying there. I wonder about that too when I get older. I'm like, will I always want to write about like late teens, early 20s? Or is that only because I'm this age right now?
I think that only makes sense, right? Like, we haven't experienced enough in a life to have the answer to this question, because we're still kids. I'm a child. I'm very young, and I feel 17 most of the time.
I think too, like as a creative person who is like a natural storyteller, you'll like experience things and be like, that is a story, like that should be made into something, I can write about that. And so it only makes sense that you like write about people your age, or just the things that you were like witnessing in your everyday life. And even if you're writing something, you know, like Michaela, you're kind of more into fantasy, or just like something that isn't necessarily super reflective of everyday life, it's still going to be, because like, you know, your experience is so embedded in your work. Like I didn't really realize, I was talking to Michaela about this, that like reading my script back, which you're not supposed to do right away, but I did. I just didn't realize like how much it is me. Like the main character she is me, and like I knew that, but I read it with Jack, my boyfriend, and he's just like this is your life. Like I can see your bedroom and like your house. Like this is, and you just don't realize that really, like as you're writing.
You do write what you know in a way. And Katie, I felt the exact same way when I was reading your script. I was just like, this is Katie. Like, I can like picture this all in front of my mind, especially the teal bedroom. I was like, that's Katie's room. And I pictured like your house. And it's just because it was written so authentically in your voice that I couldn't help but like picture that. And like you can just tell that you totally poured everything of yourself into that. And I think it's just natural that no matter what you write, that pieces of you are going to find its way in, even like if you don't necessarily want them there. Like the book that I'm working on right now, I am not writing these are two characters that are not, I didn't think, a reflection of myself like the other book is, where I'm like, that character is me. But this book with these two new characters, I'm like, these are not me. And then I'm writing them and I'm like, God dang it, how the hell did this happen? Where it's like so much of myself still in this story.
I think that's also why it's so hard, because it is so personal, and like that voice in the back of your head is like, you are making the biggest fool of yourself. This is embarrassing. Like it's like so vulnerable. It's like being naked, you know? I remember Shelby, one of our first classes that we had together, our teacher was like, after reading all of your scripts, I now know like about all of your temperament and everything. And I was just like, that is so, like, I feel like he just like put a camera in my bedroom, you know? Like it's just very vulnerable. And so that's why like you two are the only people and Jack that I'm giving this script to, because it's like scary to me to think about giving it to people who don't like know me as intimately as you guys do.
Those are the best stories though, you know, the ones that are like I think to a degree, like people say this all the time, but like the thing that is really scary is the thing that you should do. And authenticity is what people enjoy about anything, and despite what the industry will tell you, people want to see people being people. I have not read your script yet, but I've got time off now, so I'm very excited. When we did Kin in college, that was so easy for me to see, and that's why it was easy to bring to life. And I will always consider that my directorial debut, because that was the film that solidified my desire to be a director. Like doing that project with you guys was like I was like, yes, like this is it. This is how I'm supposed to feel. Like I had the worst day of class, like just absolutely hating life. Don't want to do this Victorian literature class. Like at 4:45 p.m. I was like, this is a nightmare. I can't do this. And I got to our set, the hallway, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. This is just here talking to our actor about his character and what we're about to do was enough to like raise my spirits. But like this over the past year, I couldn't see, and I never could. Even like the script that I turned, because this is from my fiction filmmaking class, the one that we did those 2 films in. I wrote that thing in 45 minutes during my evolution lecture.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Our professor gave me a 10 out of 10, and I was like, if you had any idea the lack of effort I put into this, you would not be so impressed.
I remember because we had already committed at that point to making Werewolf Fangirl, but he wrote on yours, make this one, not mine. And we were like, no. But we made it anyways.
Because then, like, I wouldn't have been able to direct it, and, like, that was the goal, was, like, Katie writer, right. Shelby director. Poor Dylan had no idea that was kind of what was happening telepathically.
He was played like a violin.
Poor kid. You know, he was always working anyways. He's nice. I still like Dylan. But, like, I'm glad that I waited, because now it's going to be better. Like, it's going to be better. Totally. And I wouldn't have been able to do it justice then, because I wrote that script to turn in an assignment. I didn't really write it to be made, you know? I'm really excited to do that.
But I do just want to say that, like, it's special for me to hear you say that, like, Ken was such a defining moment for you, because for me, like, I will never forget when you sent that message to Dylan and I, because it was between me and his script, and, like, you chose mine. And that is like the moment that changed my life, seriously, because Ken was made, and then Werewolf Fangirl was made, and like those films validated me and solidified that I want to be a writer, and gave me that experience of seeing my work on screen at such an early stage where I was like, is this what I want to do? Should I just be an English teacher? Like, what? It was like, it gave me that high of, you know, all that work that we put in, and like not 1 minute of it wasn't fun. It was the best. And so like, thank God that I had that before I like gave up, before I even started.
Specifically Ken, because we had our fair share of trouble with the werewolf. Not because of us. We were doing our job. Katie, we did that entire film ourselves. Okay?
We did. The credits was us being so petty. Like lifting ourselves for everything.
We were literally in the lab for 16 hours. Do you remember that?
I was like delusional, but
I mean,
I saw her.
I just like, and you were there, like I was editing and you were just there for moral support, and I was like, Katie, I need you to just sit here with me.
And I like fell asleep.
It would not have gotten done if you weren't there, I promise you. Yeah, and Ken specifically, like I'm really happy to know that it was really instrumental for both of us, and it's like kind of like a shared experience as filmmakers, because yeah, I knew after Ken, especially like when we finished it and we were watching it on the projector, I was like, we did this. This is good. We had the best one in the class. No shade. Full shade.
Yeah.
I think we're all just in this together, and I'm so excited to like hopefully work together soon now that the panoramic is over and I can get out to LA for the first time. I've literally never been, but Michaela and I want to take a trip out there, and then I might just like stay whenever we go if we can like make the timing work out. Oh, so much hope now that we are vaccinated queens. Blood clots be damned. So, Shelby, where can the people find you? Anything you want to plug right here, right now?
At The Art Bandit on Instagram, and my brand is at BanditxApparel. That's kind of it. Oh, I have a website, but like that's just like an online resume at this point. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I hate social media as much as I use it, so I'd be on there.
I'll link it all in the description. Everywhere that you can find Shelby, you should buy from her clothing line. Support the brand.
Alrighty, everyone. We're still trying to combat that 1-star review on Apple Pods. So if you have not already, go on to Apple Pods, give us a 5-star rating and review. Make sure that you subscribe to us as well and download our episodes every Monday. If you are listening on Spotify, make sure you go to our podcast homepage, Popcorn Chats, and make sure that you are following us on there and downloading our episodes again every Monday. If you're listening wherever else, subscribe, download, however you do that. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, like our videos, leave us a comment. Nice comments only. Thank you. And also follow us on TikTok at Popcorn Chats Pod. All the rest of Katie and I's social media is in the bio as well, but as Katie and I have said in the past, we're pretty boring on most of our social medias. TikTok is kind of the only one that I'm active on.
I just made a really cute one of my dog, so go watch it. It's so cute. Thank you, Shelby.
That's all of our stuff. Yes, thank you, Shelby.
Thank you for being on the pod.
Anytime. I really enjoyed this. I haven't talked to anybody besides my one friend down here in a long time.
Next week, oh my god, guys, next week we are covering Shadow and Bone, the new Netflix show. I am so excited. I sent Katie a snap of me screaming last night just watching fan edits of this show that's not even out yet. So be ready, everyone. It's gonna be a fun episode. Hopefully, I have high hopes.
Yay! Can't wait. Lilas.
Lilas.